it's a lifelong work.
Absolutely.
I just don't set the boundaries. It's not like set it and forget it. It takes continual. Boundaries are living things. It is a living energy that is part of my being, and at different points and in different ways and during different experiences, those boundaries are going to shift. And to be like in the flow with what is coming up for me. That's why I feel like those 4 response types: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
Yeah.
It also completely redefined what those responses actually mean. They're not some sort of maladaptive, there's something wrong with me. No, they are warning systems. They're information to communicate, something's up, time to check in. Like, where in this like living energy of this boundary, what's going on?
Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hello, and welcome back to Grow with Robin Breckenridge. I am so beyond excited to start this conversation. I think we already started it before we started the episode. Ben, you don't know this because this episode hasn't come out yet, but the one that's coming out today, I kind of queued you up and I said that you were one of my favorite people. So I am so honored before I even introduce you. I'm just so happy that you're here. I know this is going to be an emotional episode for me. Like both, I'm probably going to be doing a lot of smiling and a lot of crying because I just love you so much. So today's episode is a very special one for me. I am sitting down with someone I've worked with for 8 years. Has it been 8 years? Okay.
8 years.
Even though it feels like you've always been in my life, it feels like a long time and also not that long, but it's been 8 years. But here's the craziest thing about today. We've actually never met in person or seen each other in person. Which I was saying to Ben before we started this episode, like, is just that's what is so beautiful to me about connection. Like sometimes we think it has to be this ideal way. And yet you and I have always done sessions over the phone because that's how I started doing them. And it worked. And we've built this like beautiful, I feel like you are like in my soul family. That's how much I know you. So we've actually never met in person. So today when you hopped on was the first time I've actually seen your face. I've seen you on your like videos that you post online and things, but so wonderful for me to see your face.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much, Robin.
So welcome. So this is definitely one of the safest and transformational relationships that I've had a part of being a part of. So it is proof that when there's attunement, truth telling, and presence, connection doesn't require proximity. It requires care. So my guest today, after all of that, is Ben Sullivan, a shaman, a spiritual guide, an intuitive mentor who has spent years helping others reconnect with the sacred. His work is grounded in deep presence, energetic attunement, and truth telling. And those qualities are exactly what makes this conversation today so powerful. Through his one-on-one work, Ben supports clients in accessing clarity, releasing old patterns, and finding a more integrated, soul-aligned way of living. And in this episode, we'll talk about how doing his own inner work around boundaries and nervous system regulation made space for that transformation, not just for others, but for himself. So Ben came to this work. I'm going to give you a little bit of spiel of like how I experienced you with a background of people pleasing.
True.
Having a hard time managing overwhelm.
True.
And not knowing that his needs mattered. Here we go. I'm already going to cry. And over the years, I've had the honor of witnessing, I mean, the true honor, I don't even think honor does it justice, of witnessing his evolution, not into someone totally different at all, but into someone that is more fully himself. So today we're exploring how boundary work really looks like in real life from the inside out, because you have known me for 8 years. I think you for sure know how much I love talking about boundaries and teaching them. Mm-hmm. You also know that it's one thing to know them, it's a whole nother thing to implement them. So I just did a whole bunch of episodes about boundaries, all the things that you learned working with me. And I really wanted to bring some people on that have embodied this concept in their life. And, you know, because you've worked with me, like, it's really great to individualize this. It's actually the best way of doing this. And it's not something that I can necessarily do on a podcast or on this platform. So I wanted to bring some people in to just give you your individualized experience of this work, because I know that will resonate with so many people. So all that to you know, that I just talked about how much I love you, how many amazing things that you do. And I can just tell you, like, I've never gone to you for like any type of shaman work. However, I would send my mother to you. And I am a stingy ass referral. I know that I have sent you some people and they've literally called me like, where did this human being come from? So welcome, Ben.
Thank you so much, Robin. Holding back tears already. I know this is going to be such a good conversation.
Okay, so let's hop right in. I'm just going to ask you some questions. We'll just kind of go where it takes us. But I would love for you to share in your own words a little bit about your backstory and what drew you to personal development, like healing work.
Sure. So, you know, like I'm sure many people listening, a lot of struggle, a lot of challenge through my early years. You know, part of a really wonderful, beautiful, loving family that had their own challenges and struggles. And in my early teens, really started to feel a calling or a orientation towards something that was not available in any sort of my lived experience up to that point, in terms of like a connection to something greater than myself. I wouldn't exactly call it like a spiritual calling at that time. It was much more of like an intellectual thing. It was much more of like, there's got to be something more than this, but I didn't really have much access, practice, understanding, or awareness of what like a connection to the sacred even meant. And so, you know, through some of my own exploration, I became acquainted with some traditional understandings and practices around earth-based spirituality. Shamanism is another word that's used quite often. I kind of, over the years, have understood it more of like a connection to the sacred through personal, direct contact with the sacred. And it really led me in some very, very fascinating, very resonant directions, but it was very solitary. This was like late 90s. So there wasn't a whole lot out there in terms of resources or community or even just teachers, practitioners, mentors that I grew up in New England and Rhode Island, you know, not a real hotbed of mystical activity. So it was just kind of like a solo journey. And like I said, a very intellectual journey. And it wasn't until many years later, you know, 10, 12 years later, that I was introduced to real opportunity to experience traditional ceremonial practices, ceremonial life, what that means, like before and after an experience. I was exposed and had the opportunity to experience traditions that still work with today, plant medicine. Try to use that term separately than psychedelics, because in my experience, those are kind of two different things.
Okay.
But that was my first exposure to that, was the first instance where it really linked this kind of curiosity, this intellectual exploration to something much deeper. And that's really where I feel like the true healing and growth on my end started to take place. And as I started to kind of unpack these things and start to get deeper insight to myself, there was something really clear that, like, okay, what these experiences are providing is super profound, super meaningful, very deep, but I'm having a hard time integrating. I'm having a hard time kind of putting the pieces together for myself. I was very much in a place of still a solitary journeyer. Even though I was having greater opportunity to be in community and meeting like-minded people and other things, there was a big piece missing was, getting back to that definition I just used for, the shamanic practice, which is like personal contact with the mystical. I was missing like the personal contact with like the human, with like a reflection of the process I was going through. And, we can kind of get more into that in a moment, but it was, while all this is going on, I'm just also still a human myself, trying to navigate in the muggle realms, and had gotten myself into a really sticky, codependent relational experience, very unhealthy. She was a wonderful person, but not a good experience for me. And I had zero tools, zero resources to understand what was going on. And I was spinning out on the reg. And a good mutual friend of ours, who we both care about very much, could kind of see and was like, wow, you look like you could use a little help. Let me introduce you to my person I've been working with for a few years. And I was like, okay, this person's name's Robin. That sounds safe. I like Robins. I'll take anything at this moment. And that led to our first call. And in that experience was like, this was, it's kind of like the collection of missing pieces. First, it was this experience of direct contact with the spirit, with the mystical. Then it was a direct contact with a community and like-minded people. And then like, here's someone who I feel sees me and understands and can reflect back in a way that really lands with where I'm at and what's coming up for me.
So much of like what you're saying, even though my journey didn't take me to the same places as you, was so similar. Like I was seeking so much to like connect to something bigger, to be healthier, but like the pathway wasn't laid out. And I think what I hear you saying, I'm not sure I'm hearing it like exactly correctly, but was that like the pathway had to come back to you, like your relationship to you, right? Because I've had so many clients that have used ayahuasca and it's been such an amazing experience. And I had one experience where someone was doing it like often. And I was like, oh my God, like, okay, that's great. She was getting so much information, but like, it wasn't teaching her how to be like on this plane, like how to be a human here. I mean, I think it was, that's not fair to say, like it was giving her a lot of information. But it's just a reminder, like my own journey took me so many places that were like, seek out healing through spiritual practices and through teachers and through psychology. And it wasn't until the practice that led me back into being in relationship with myself, where like that was like the foundation where all the rest of that became like, I guess, icing on the cake.
Totally. And I resonate with that so much. And I've said this with you and I've said it with others as well, is like one of the most powerful, meaningful, beautiful aspects of our work together was that you, in our conversations, you were a step removed from all of this incredible, amazing, confusing, mind-blowing, psychedelic plant medicine experiences I was having. And there was so much in those, in that community and in that container that was so helpful. And also to have a relationship with someone who I was able to speak to openly and honestly, who was able to reflect back to me in a loving, kind way and kind of be removed from all of that was incredibly, like, it was one of the most helpful healing parts of it.
Yeah.
And that's the piece, the integration part of it is how do we come back to being human in the experience, and appropriate for our conversation today, how can I establish those boundaries with these different parts of self, these different communities that I'm engaging with, these different people I'm connecting to and working with, all in some way or another, every person in my life is simply holding up a mirror. How can I engage with the reflection that's coming back in a way that feels whole and integral and honest?
And that is why I would send my mother to you if she was going to do ayahuasca, which I don't anticipate happening, but you never know. Because my gosh, you're a seeker, Ben, but you are just, I'm probably going to compliment you a lot in this episode. I mean, you are someone that embodies it, even boundaries. I mean, we've talked about boundaries in your practitioner work, which we all have to look like, and ethical power dynamics and so many things. So I think to bring it kind of back, because we can go off topic as much as we want. We can talk about everything we want, but I'm going to keep bringing it back to boundaries, because I think it's probably true for you as well. Boundaries have been my flotation device in this life. Mm-hmm. And I think just witnessing your journey, that it's been true for you too. So tell me a little bit about what your relationship with boundaries was like before that first call with me.
There wasn't. The idea of boundaries was either a enormous concrete wall, 30 feet tall, or just an open field. There was no in between. It was either this is not good for me, or yes, I'm going to allow all of it. And not even, I'm sure we'll get into some of the ideas around the boundary pyramid and these other amazing tools that you've helped me so much with. But to even have the concept that there can actually be gradation, there can be, different levels of boundaries, total foreign concept. Yeah. And coming into our work together, I know you remember it, I do too. Those first conversations was Robin, I don't get what the hell you're talking about. What does any of this mean? None of this can't be right, Or
worse, it's going to cost me the thing I want the most, right? Which is this person's approval, or the connection that I have with this person that might, be a little toxic. So I think it just speaks to how brave this work is. When I'm teaching it on this platform, I just have to keep repeating that, the self-honoring path is not the easiest path, but it's why I'm having guests on this podcast, because you're on the other end of it. And I have watched you develop this aligned life, which means that sometimes we have to let go of things. Sometimes we have to put boundaries in place. Sometimes we have to make the hard choice. So I think one of my favorite things about working with you is, I think it's true that sometimes we call in past versions of us in healing work. And man, were our stories similar in certain ways. I remember that I think we coined a term called tap shoes, just you and I in our work, where we were you're putting on the tap shoes, which meant you were over functioning, you were performing, right? And to think back, this is where I wish I recorded sessions, because if we went backwards, one, I think we'd have so much compassion for that guy that wasn't connected to the work that you have. But man, you are the same person, because the minute I met you, I loved you. Your warmth and kindness and intelligence shines through. But, there was just this little boy in there that was in some pain and didn't have appropriate self-parenting.
Yeah.
And I think that one way to look at boundaries is that it's a form of self-parenting. I would not personally allow people around my child that were toxic or, destructive to him in some way. But yet, for myself, I like you said, it was these extremes of you're all in or you're all out. And you and I, when we first started working together, I worked for a different company, and this was languaged differently, right? So don't feel pressured that if you call it the wrong thing or whatever else, which is no big deal. But when I learned it, that's what was so powerful. I was I have to tell people about this.
Right.
And what I love about what you do is like, because I really don't know much about your industry. And again, like I've never done anything with it, but like what I love is you were integrating this work into that work. And I don't know how you do it, to be quite honest, but I think you have boundaries yourself and you're aware, like you've told me before, like people will come to you and say, the medicine told me this. And you're like, are you sure it's not your teenager? You sure it's not that part of self or whatever? So I loved that you were able to not only live it, but like bring it into the work of helping other people as well. So were there specific ways that you saw like people pleasing showing up in your life previous to our work or even in the beginning of our work?
Oh, for sure. I think that whole connection that in the early days when you were really helping me bring that relationship to my inner child, to that little guy, and we would call him like Benny Blue Jeans with the bowl cut, like that, becoming more aware of that was really what illuminated how this whole codependent, anxiously attached, unboundaried approach to relationships was. And I say it with compassion now, but so destructive, and was really just throwing that poor little kid to the wolves sometimes, or just like leaving him outside in the cold. And so seeing how some of these things kept playing over and over again, the people pleasing predominantly in like friend relationships, potential romantic partners, that was, just tell me what you need from me to be loved. Tell me what I need to do to not be rejected, and just give me the list. I'll take care of it. Just give me the details. I'm a Virgo. I will organize it and alphabetize and get it right. And also in the experience of, especially as my own personal path developed with this work and with working with plant medicine, and it started to transition away from just a purely individual, I'm just here for myself, to orienting towards more service work and our service approach, working with mentors and teachers and people who would, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, get a nice, shiny, polished pedestal to sit up on. And then recognizing like, oh, this is a whole people pleasing, whole different approach to it, or a whole different kind of energy, a whole different vibe to it. And all of it coming back to that same core wound, that same core story of like, abandonment is death. Rejection is a death sentence. And I will do anything to not do that, to not be put in that position.
I personally would have rather died than be like fully rejected, where it's like really that personal, or left. But you bring up such a great concept that I haven't talked about on the podcast yet. So this is a great kind of like, cue into like a future episode. But that idea of pedestaling people and like how that goes along with an anxious attachment wound. Because if someone's in the one up, where are you?
One down.
So, I think that we should maybe pause and talk about that for a second. Like, if you are putting someone on a pedestal, which means you're putting them above you, and you're in the one down, are you worthy of having boundaries?
I mean, the piece that was so, and I kind of look back to it now and being like, whoa, it's so tricky. And it's so like in our mind, our inner being, what creator kind of put into us to experience this human life is like, wow, that's super smart, but it's hard as hell, is, especially for myself, and I'm sure others can relate, is wanting to have like a high degree of like self-inquiry. And, really, I want to take a look at myself, and I know what triggers me in someone else is something that is for me to take a look at. But that whole process, which is healthy, can be over rotated upon. It can be overexpressed to where I'm allowing the other person's perception to override my own. I'm allowing their opinion, their experience of me to downgrade my own, and to have, and this is part of that pedestaling where it's like, I'm allowing this person to have a certain level of authority over my own experience. And I don't want to be seen as like, oh, I'm just bypassing, I'm ignoring, I'm avoiding. So I really want to take a look at what's coming up here. But at the same time, where am I building the trust with myself that maybe I'm reading the situation correctly?
Ooh.
Or maybe like both things can be true.
Ooh.
And it's like it's that from my experience working with you, the boundary is what creates the space to allow that thought, to allow that feeling to exist. Yeah. Without the boundary, it's like, well, that's who they are. They're up there and I'm down here. I got to listen to what they're saying.
Yeah. It must be
they
true.
Must see something. It must be true. Yeah. They must see it and I can't see it. So I guess I got to just eat this and, make it true.
So I think that, that definition of trust being data over time, we have to get data over time on ourselves too. And I distinctly remember, Ben, I don't know if you have a moment like this too, where like I was in the previous organization I was in and I was like seeing some things. And of course my mind was going like, no, you must be seeing this wrong. You must be missing something. Like you must be doing something wrong. And I had this moment where I went, what if I unapologetically believed my experience? And the first voice came in and went, well, what if you're wrong? Right. And I went, okay, well, I like have enough trust in the universe that like, man, it brings truth to me sometimes with a 2x4, but like it brings it. Right. So I can trust that like, if there's something I'm to know, it will let me know it. So I took one of the biggest risks of my life to believe what was going on, which meant I had to de-pedestal some people. And we have not talked about this. So again, I'll talk about it in a future episode. But if there's a one up and there's a one down, then what in the middle is same as, right? And if we can find that same as, like, I'm not better or worse than anybody, because that's what intrinsic self-esteem tells us. My worth is inherent. It can't be added to or subtracted from, right? Then maybe I do know what's going on. Maybe my nervous system is communicating something that I can believe. And I think this is also, Ben, want to come back for 100 more episodes? Because we could talk about so many breakout episodes there. But like part of an anxious attachment wound, right, is that we don't know the difference between our truth and our anxiety, or our intuition and our anxiety. Which is why I love systems, right? It's like when we can't trust ourselves, we could trust that boundary pyramid. Because I've been vetting it out for 10 years, and it works. Like the principles are easy to follow. It's like, okay, here's the things that I can follow. So we can start to trust that. But watching you in live time on my end, de-pedestal people and bring yourself up from the one down, like, thank you. As great as it was for you, it was as great for me.
Thank you.
So, I
remember it, and just a quick story, from our personal relationship as in one of the instances, because I had a whole museum of pedestals of people through my life. And one by one, you helped me so much to kind of to work through this. And at one point, I don't know, I had a really big week. I had some tough conversations and I did it. And I was so excited to get on the call. And I was just like, thank you, Robin. And I was telling somebody about Saint Robin. And God, thank you, Saint Robin, and this and that. And you, in such a kind way, such a very just neutral way, was like, hey, I'm Robin. I'm here. I'm your coach. I'm your friend. I'm Robin. I was like, dude, these pedestals are sneaky. And I'm just but just in that way, that was such a teaching moment and informative experience too, because it's like, pedestals in my experience can be made out of fear. Pedestals can be made out of some sort of obligation or sense of this is how this relationship needs to be. Pedestals can be made out of genuine appreciation and love. But at the end of the day, it's still a pedestal. And the same way to take any of those down is coming back to that sense of I am worthy as well. There is, we're on equal footing. And can we look like eye to eye instead of, looking up or looking down?
That's right. It's my favorite way to coach. I'm not a fan of unhealthy power dynamics. And, I have struggled in my life so much with unrealistic expectations of myself. Like, I don't know if this is true for you being in healing work, but like, there's been times where like I've had human moments and my inner child has come up and I've gone, I'm a coach. People pay me. I'm supposed to have this figured out. And I have struggled with myself to be like, you're also human. And even though you help people, you're allowed to have a human experience. In fact, one of my pet peeves, I know I've told you this before, is when I've gone to friends in a moment of activation, which means my inner child is up, not the person that's coaching. And they go, what would you tell a client? Oh, you did so much work. You're still, and I'm like, oh, immediately it feels like shame. Mm-hmm. So to be honest, like battling that in myself, like when clients started to do it, like, oh, well, you never mess up, or I can't believe your life was ever screwed up. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. Don't put, because they have that saying, like, never meet your idols.
Never meet your heroes. Yeah.
Your heroes, whatever. And it's like, yeah, guess what? I don't want to let anybody down. I'm human. And if I'm a saint and an angel, like people have called me an angel, I'm like, God help us all. I am definitely having a human experience here. So I love that you bring that up, because I think it's just really important to know that like safe therapeutic environments don't require anybody to be less human or on a pedestal. Because, I'm a wounded healer, and I think the really good ones are the ones, I think you're a wounded healer too, just meaning we've been through some stuff. We experientially learned this. I'm a wounded healer. I just have ethics at the core of what I do. So I don't want to harm anybody, know? Mm-hmm. So, okay, Ben. So what has surprised you the most about learning to implement and hold boundaries in your life? Because I would say now that you are very, very skilled at this boundary thing.
Well, certainly more skilled than 8 years ago by a long shot. One of the pieces that took a while, and I remember you mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts leading up to our call here, was this idea of, especially in the early days, when we start to look at the pyramid and you were walking me through, okay, sacred, this isn't for the non-humans, this is for like the truly sacred relationships in your life. The trust, there's specificity to what that means. And then the shared interest, and like the distance between trust and shared interest felt like, the distance from here to Alpha Centauri. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if I put someone in shared interest, that must mean that I don't care about them, or I just want to have this be like a very sterilized relationship, whatever. But really, really understanding, and you speak to it so well, that it is like, what's love got to do with it? I think that's the theme song for the boundary period. But to say like, this is truly a matter of safety. This is truly a matter of like to create a healthy relationship with myself through healthy reflection through those around me and those people in my life. And that, to me, once we really started to dig into that, and I kind of started to really internalize what you were communicating and what that particular delineation means, from trust to shared interest, all the thoughts that I had about this is going to like sterilize or neuter, or I'm just going to have like this very kind of at arm's length relationship with people in my life, was just the opposite. And what surprised me the most was like, oh, boundaries do clarify. Boundaries are kind. Boundaries actually make the relationship much more transparent, much more like integrated, heart-centered, and whole. And, I'm going to answer your question with two answers.
Great.
They are, it's a lifelong work.
Absolutely.
I just don't set the boundaries. It's not like set it and forget it. It takes continual, boundaries are living things. It is a living energy. that is part of my being. And at different points and in different ways and during different experiences, those boundaries are going to shift. And to be like in the flow with what is coming up for me. That's why I feel like those 4 response types, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, it also completely redefined what those responses actually mean. They're not some sort of maladaptive, there's something wrong with me. No, they are warning systems. They're information to communicate, something's up, time to check in. Like, where in this like living energy of this boundary, what's going on? If this is coming up, it's trying to tell me something, and it's not that I'm broken or, oh, here I go again, I haven't learned a thing, I'm back to doing it the old way. It's like, oh no, these boundaries are actually communicating to me. This living energy is something I can be in relationship with, to be in better relationship with myself and with the people in my life.
It's so true. We need 4 hours because I've already wanted to divert this into like 5 different directions. But I mean, the reason I say this, and there's a million reasons, but this is a strong reason that I'm so passionate about teaching this work, is not that it's like quick fixes or hacks necessarily, but in living this work, I was like, wait a minute, this nervous system isn't against me. It's actually the biggest source of clarity I have. I just have to learn this language in which it communicates to me through, right? Which is like feelings. And so I know that you can relate to this. Like, before, my anxious attachment or my fight response or whatever was like this crazy part of me that like I needed to like get rid of and contain. Then once I started like getting curious with it, I was like, oh my God, it tells me the truth every time. It goes, hey girl, rejection, abandonment, neglect is either in your environment or it's in the story you're telling yourself. It's actually never been wrong. Has it ever been wrong for you? Not for me.
Never. Nope.
Okay. And it's literally how I coach. Like, I don't walk into a session with you and go, I know what Ben should do. I listen to your nervous system because your nervous system is housing the truth, right? So I love all of that. Also, I just wanted to stop and talk about the shared interest because I love your lived experience of this, and then kind of being on the other side of it and knowing that boundaries aren't mean and they're not harsh. But for me, when I first did that work, I had like 100 friends, right? I was like, list of 20 I have, like, how am I going to fit everybody in here, right? Like, when I'm putting who's in what category, and all of a sudden nobody was in trust. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And then everybody was in shared interest. And I remember for like a period of time, and I'm going to always be honest, because there's people listening that I never want to sell. Like, I had that aha light bulb moment where I was just like, I totally get shared interest. I was so depressed because I'm a deep person, and I know you're a deep person. And like, sometimes shared interest can feel like surface, and like, I'm not getting like that need satiated. And I went to my place of support at the time and I was like, it's horrible. I'm having a horrible time. And she goes, what's wrong? I go, everyone's in shared interest. And she goes, oh, that's cool. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm bored. This seems dull. She goes, oh, because shared interest is light. It's easy. It's nice to go get like a margarita with your friend, or go like grab a coffee and be done with it. And I was like, oh. And then but it took me a while, the value of that shared interest category, and then linking that with this thing I never did before, which was ever consider, but how is my well-being in the container of this relationship? Not how much I love them or how much I want them to love me or whatever. How am I feeling? How safe am I feeling? Never even crossed my mind. So like, to me, that shared interest space is probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. Where like, because I always say like, in the spectrum of like black and white things, the middle is authenticity, right? Like, okay, I either cut people off and keep them away from me, or I have no boundaries and I let them in. Somewhere in the middle of that is who you really are. Right? Like, that you can have discernment to like protect yourself, but also be open for connection. And that shared interest space to me is like that. It's the middle of the spectrum of connection that says like, I can both connect and protect within this. Mm-hmm. And also like choose.
Yeah.
Choose
that piece around the agency of the boundaries too. Like we were talking in so many different ways is like, you know, and this is what I just appreciated so much about our conversations over the years is that, I mean, at no point did you ever come and say, this is what you got to do. Start with this, do that, write this, da, da, da. But it was like that coming back to that next kindest choice. And and the kindest choice starting here. And knowing that if I make that kindest choice here, it will, through, you know, creator's design, be the kindest choice for the other person too. And I had that like backwards for so many times. Like, all right, let me mind read. Let me get into my superhuman powers of knowing exactly what the other person is thinking and being able to figure out what is the best thing and then do that. And then I'll come back to me. Like 0% success rate with that over this lifetime. But to flip it to like, okay, what in this relationship? Yeah, we've had so many good times together. We've had very deep conversations over the years. And this is someone who I've like really exposed in a vulnerable way and held space for their vulnerable expression. But now something's different. Now there's, you know, things change. Life, we go in different directions. You know, the paths kind of come together and go apart. And am I allowed to have some agency to say like, okay, even though I've done it this way for the last 12 years, I have the choice to do it differently. And let me make that choice from that perspective of what is the kindest choice for me first. And that's not selfish. And that's not, you know, narcissistic or whatever. That's not manipulative. It's actually it is the highest choice. It is the most aligned position to start from in relationships of any kind.
And I think that's such a valuable thing to bring up today because we've both been in this for a while. And I know that like now I can live it and just be like, oh God, boundaries are just great. And they're not selfish and they're not mean, but man, in the beginning, that was not my experience. So like if anybody is starting to implement boundaries in their life or consider it and those feelings are coming up, it's so normal. And we're not here to put ourselves on pedestals and be like, this is how you do it and life is better. It's just that it's like the Sherpa like analogy of going up the mountain. I've just been on this climb longer and I know it gets better, but I love what you brought up because I know for myself too, it's been so true where I'm like, oh gosh, like I know it's better for me. And in fact, I did get some feedback from someone that was like, well, I like Robin's work, but it seems really selfish. Like it's really about her. Right. But what I learned is that when I'm honest, when I show up in my authenticity and in honesty, I'm actually honoring the other person. And if they don't like that, like, hey, I don't want a friend that has these limitations or parameters, or then they can choose.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Like they can have their boundaries. They can decide what's in alignment for them and what's not. Like I had a friend one time, you know, because you've known me a long time, like I'm very passionate about this work. It's a big priority in my life. And there was a time where I had so much more time for like friends and, you know, the occasional lunch and breakfast. And I had a friend that we would go get breakfast, like, I don't know, maybe every other week. And I got to the place where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, you know, I was reluctant to show up. Like we talked about resentment and these type of things as being like alarms. And so I told her the truth because I wanted to honor her and not show up out of guilt or fear of upsetting someone or whatever. And I said, hey, I want to be honest with you. Because she said, I feel like you're not as available like to do these things. And I said, you know what? You're right. I'm not. Where a past version of me would have been like, wait, hold on. Like either I need to hustle harder or I need to defend myself against this. And I said, you're right. I am prioritizing my family and my work right now and this mission that I'm on to help people. And I don't have as much time as I did. And if that isn't aligned with the type of friendship you're looking for, I get it. And that can sound in some ways like cold or harsh or whatever, but it was just the truth.
Yeah.
That's what I had to offer. And she could choose to say, well then girl, guess what? You're in shared interest, or you're in no contact or whatever. Like, and that's okay. But I honored myself and her by being honest. So, I think that you're doing such a great job of describing how when you push through the hard things and you continue to stay curious with yourself and what feedback you get from implementing boundaries, like, they're the most loving, honoring thing that you can do for everyone. Now, of course, the way you deliver it matters.
Yeah. And this is the part where I think it's like, there is only one way to grow through this practice, and that is to practice, and like you were saying before, systems can be so helpful, so valuable, because it's something I can continue to return to. And okay, here we go. And then it's happening, to your point, that it's not like we've done it and we are, professional boundary makers and holders. There's experiences in my life, real time, happening right now. And I've been working with you for 8 years, where it's like, dang, here it is again. And man, okay, here's that pattern of like, here comes that freeze pattern again, where it's like, oh, something is activating, and I need to step back. I need to just like check in with myself. But where's the line between checking in and now I'm just avoiding or hiding? Oh, I've got, hours and hours and hours of conversations with Robin to talk about this, and here it is again. Yeah. Thank goodness for this like repeatable, reliable system to come back to, so that I can just remind myself, center back in to what it is. Okay, where are they on the pyramid? What is it? Well, what is the shared interest? What is like the part in this relationship that feels available and safe and relatable to operate from? And if in doing that, if in coming back to that means I need to have a conversation, or I need to maybe speak to something a little more directly that I may have spoken to maybe a little indirectly 6 months ago.
That's right.
And maybe just kind of like softened it a bit and used very kind of like, as humans, don't we all? And maybe just come back and say like, no, this is really what's happening. Okay, I can show up to that. I can do that. And set up a session with Robin next week to talk all about it. But it's like, this is something that I can always return to. And every time that I do, every time that I show up to it, that's telling little Benny Blue Jeans, like, I'm on your side. I heard you. Yes. Man, so I get it. Something was really up. Something was activating. It took me a little while to kind of tune into it, but I hear you. And here's what we're going to do about it.
Yeah. And how you feel matters. Like when you're scared, when you're overwhelmed, when, you're not alone in it. That's what you're telling little Benny. And I didn't know you had a bowl cut, because I had a bowl cut too. Look at that. More in common. But, I laugh every time, Ben, that I've done like a workshop or a speaking engagement and people intro me like I did for you earlier. And they go, Robin is an expert in boundaries. Like, it cracks me up because I think you and I are just not here to make it like, oh my God, this work never ends and it's so overwhelming. I'm not an expert. I've just practiced it a lot. And I always tell people like, I don't teach this because I was exceptionally good at it. I teach it because I was exceptionally bad at it. And it was very challenging. And I think you bring up another really important part, which is we need support. Like, you're not reliant on me. I see you when you need me. That's kind of the way I have things set up, is people can come consistently for a period of time and then come back as needed. But sometimes we need help. Like, I have 2 professional places that I go to, because when little Benny Blue Jeans is up or my little Rockin' Robin is up, I don't have the resources available to me that I might tell you in a session. So like, we do need some support. And like, if someone's listening and they don't have support, I mean, it might be something you want to check out, but like, even I think you don't like AI, if I'm remembering correctly, but like,
correct.
Know that, okay, for me, so I'll speak for myself, like Chat GPT for some of my clients. And I know that this is a very individualized, relationship and how you want to do it. But like, even something like that, if you literally have no one in your life where you could just plug something in and you have some level of support, is enough. But you can't do it alone. I can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the support part is really important. And I love the structure piece too, because it's helped me, like, just being able, I always tell everybody, like, this work doesn't prohibit you from falling down or falling back into patterns. It allows you to dust yourself up and dust yourself off and get up quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Or at all. I mean, I don't know that. I think there were some things in my life where I don't know that I was dusting off and getting up.
Yeah.
I might have been crawling through the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, and part of the conversation around boundaries that you talked about earlier, and is such like a core part of it, is that like the nervous system doesn't lie. And to like have a relationship with that part of myself where it's like, okay, amongst all the other stuff, all the other things, my own, like my shadow parts, my unhealed this, my trauma that, and this little guy, my teen, blah, 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 so many different parts. We got a whole village in here. There's one part that is always honest, always true, always telling the truth. And the more that I can be in contact with that, the better I can be in contact with the other parts of myself. And that is something, again, you asked before, like, what was life like before boundaries? Like, I had zero contact with the part of me that I trusted. And because I had outsourced my trust and all sorts of things outside of me. But with these boundaries and this practice of boundaries, which is lifelong, it is like the constant refinement of my relationship with the part of myself that I can trust.
Yay. And, you know, again, that was my experience too. Like, I didn't trust anything and not myself, but being able to start to lean into trusting this communication system, because your head, I still don't trust my thoughts. Like, there are some times where I'm like, okay, this is okay. And then my head will go, maybe it's only 5 minutes, or like whatever. But when I trust my body, that like, when I feel like I'm forcing something, when I'm angry, when I'm feeling like I'm disregarded, those are places to stop and get curious. And then these systems just allow you to kind of step into a system to use within that curiosity. And then we change our behavior. So I do have some questions about your work, and I'm going to go back because I was mentioning that story I was telling earlier had to do with like my capacity changing, like my bandwidth changing. And that's something that like impacts all of us, because I always say you can't bargain with your bandwidth. So tell me, as a shaman and someone who holds space for others, how has boundary work helped you preserve your energy?
Yeah. Well, as a practitioner, I think I kind of was describing earlier, it definitely moved in different phases for a very long time. For most of the time, it was very individual, and it was really just my own personal experience. And then as I started to transition into more service oriented and helping others, it was, again, before our work together. So this idea of the boundaries and having boundaries was such a foreign concept. I didn't even know how to apply it. And there was like at that time, almost like, you use the example, like the medicine told me, ayahuasca said, and treating that as infallible. And just like, well, if ayahuasca said it, then it must be true. If God said it, it must be true.
Yeah.
And, the experience of learning to have some boundaries for myself and inserting some filters into those messages, into those experiences, really helped to clarify, internal boundaries. And then as I started to help other people, like holding the boundaries for others' experience. Because in so much of the work that I'm involved in and the modes of service that I choose to help others and be of support to others, or help others help themselves, really, it is like honoring and trusting their own experience. Again, it's like the practice that I've kind of dedicated my life to is at its core the personal, direct experience of the sacred, not the experience of the sacred through Ben. Or through that, or through this, the personal experience. And how else can I help someone relate to that if I don't have boundaries for myself? Because I could be sitting and listening to someone's experience, or they're telling me, this is what's coming up for me, or this and that. And my mind is like, oh, this. Ooh, maybe they have some trauma over here they're not looking at. Oh, I'm getting a hit. It's like, all that can be true. Yes, all that is here. All that's relevant. I can trust myself that maybe I'm having like a genuine period or a genuine experience of insight. Now it is my responsibility as a space holder to be in contact with spirit myself so that I can offer that in a way that has their own healing experience and their own journey at the forefront. I'm not going to tell you what that means, but maybe there's some questions. Maybe there's a way that I can communicate and dialogue with this person. Let me gather some more information about them and their experience so I can better understand what's coming up for me. And I think it's, through that experience of boundaries with myself that I can honor and respect their boundaries, even if they don't have a relationship with their boundaries. I know that they're there, and I can trust that somewhere that part of themselves that never lies is talking in this moment as well.
And you're speaking to internal boundaries, right? Like you don't need to go every time, I'm going to disconnect from my own experience, right? Like those are the internal boundaries. And what you're saying is it creates a safer space, right?
Yeah, I think it creates a space where the other person is allowed to have their own experience too. And of course, like you're saying, we're just Sherpas who are on a different part of the mountain, but we're still walking and we're still tired and hungry and cut up and bruised. But it's like someone comes across my path and it's like, I remember what it was like for me when I was on that side. And I can either tell you, take a left here, go right there, wear this shirt, do this prayer, do this thing. Or I can say, what was helpful for me in that experience back when some Sherpa a little bit further up for me had the kindness to offer some support.
And then they can choose. Right? Yeah, they can choose which path they decide to take, and none of it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah. I think I need to have you back on sometime just to talk about your work, because honestly, I have a million questions just to ask you about it. But what would you say your relationship with boundaries is like today?
Oh, today.
You've alluded to it, that it's still, it's still a practice that you return to.
Yeah, well, I think today, it is, my relationship to boundaries is one where there's a lot more patience for myself, a lot more compassion for myself, like a much deeper sense of awareness of these trigger responses, these nervous system reactions to things like overwhelm, to fear, anxiety, resentment, all these things. Okay, it doesn't mean the system is broken. This doesn't mean that I've forgotten everything I've learned. It means that something's up. And, it was one thing you shared in the previous episode when you really went into the different nervous system responses, the 4 Fs, where I was remembering in early days, I was like, well, I'm total freeze, 70% freeze, 30% fawn. The other two, I don't fight. I don't fight. But over the years, I'm like, I fight all the time, constantly trying to have myself be understood, constantly over explaining and well, let me say that again in a different way, or happening all the time. The flight, I freeze. I don't run away. I don't shut down. It's like, oh, I do. And so what's different for me now is there's there's more acceptance, there's more allowance for myself just to be like, okay, here it is, it's up. Currently in this very moment, the experience of exploring deep, meaningful partnership with someone which is something that you and I talked about all the time. And I remember saying are we ever going to find someone? I guess I'm just going to be alone.
If I had $1 for every time I hear that.
Well, Gandalf wasn't married and Dumbledore didn't have a wife, so maybe it's just not meant to be, And now here I am with the most beautiful partnership, the most healing relational experience ever. And here they are, here are those experience. Here's that communication from my nervous system saying somewhere in that living field of energy where my boundaries are interacting with this other sovereign being capable of her own agency and making her own choices is kind of like coming into contact. It's like okay, I can allow for the conversation and I don't have to like resort or fall into these old patterns. And even if I do, that's okay.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing, because I've witnessed it in you, is that like when we honor ourselves and we put boundaries into place, our capacity for intimacy expands. Like intimacy meaning into me, you see, like I can show up and show you all parts of me, not the parts that are shiny and nice and, society likes them, like all parts of me. And I don't think we can show up to intimacy with someone else without having intimacy with ourselves, which means we have to look at the more like yucky, undesirable parts of us that are like, God dang it, I'm still doing that thing. Or like, and it's like, yeah, I mean, because it's just this threat detector in your body doing its job. But when we have the ability to step out of the trauma reaction and we can get curious, we could go, oh, I don't need to run. I could have a hard conversation. I could lean in versus leaning out. Right. And so thank you for describing all of this. I mean, this was like, I'm like, here you go, Ben, have the show, take over. But I'd love for you. And then I'm going to ask you, like, you're so creative. You could probably help me. I'm calling them rapid fire questions. It doesn't really seem like that's what I want to call them. But before I start those, we can talk about it later. What advice would you give to someone just starting this journey who feels scared to speak up or set limits in their life?
The first bit of advice that I would give is to, in whatever way feels available, whatever way feels true, and there's so many different ways, but find some way to lean into something that connects you to that power, whatever you want to call it, greater than yourself. For me, I orient towards nature. That was a place that was always, even in my earliest days, like when all else is crumbling around me, and go to that part of the woods with my dog and hang out there. And little 5, 6, 7-year-old Benny Bloom Jeans regulating his nervous system without even knowing it. But part of the reason why that was so impactful was it felt like there was something bigger and wiser and like genuinely loving than whatever it was that I was facing in the immediate. That 10 minutes earlier felt completely consuming and overwhelming. So, whatever that looks like for this individual who is just kind of reached the edge, reached the limit of your capacity to deal or put up with what's been going on, and it just feels too far away to take that first step or make that phone call or have that tough conversation, find something, some way to connect yourself to that which is there for all of us at all times. And that is like the direct personal experience with the divine in whatever way it chooses to relate to you and you relate to it.
Yeah. I have a memory that I don't think I'll ever forget. I haven't talked about like so much about inner child work and parts of self work on the podcast yet, but there's a part of the work when you work individually with me where we start to look at different parts of self and name them and develop a relationship. And I remember one thing I did not say in this podcast is you go out into the jungle for like months at a time. And so sometimes I'm like, man, you are braver than I am. I don't know why you're calling me for advice. But this particular time, whatever you were going through, I think one of the like invitations I gave you was like, go take your inner child with you. And you were going like camping to your favorite spot in Arizona or whatever. And you sent me a video. I think I might've said like, go connect with your little boy and like, send me a video or something. I don't know. And you put it up like against a tree or something. And you were like frolicking would be the best word I could ever use. Yeah. Back and forth across the screen. And it literally, like, I will never forget it. It brought me so much joy. It was like unbridled joy. And I loved it. And so I just like, that's one of my favorite parts of the work is like, there's so many things that happen that I can't just be like, and then this client sent me a video of frolicking in the woods. But like, you know, now I get to share it on here of like, I know sometimes this work can sound like silly. I know when I first heard about like inner child work and, you know, you hear this boundaries thing and you're like, right, okay, it's these things I'm supposed to do. But there is so much beauty in it and so much deep connection, like you're saying, connecting to something bigger than you and parts of self. So I just want you to know I will never forget that frolicking video. And I wish I still had it.
Oh, I remember that very clearly. I'm just like, Robin's can't wait to send this to Robin. I'm running around the desert. Yeah.
And I'm like, woo, it's amazing. Okay. So on to some questions. The basis of these questions is, this is the way I can individualize these things on this podcast, is just ask the same questions to the amazing guests that come on, and then you can give your individualized response. So first question, what is a belief about yourself that you had to unlearn?
Well, it's one that we spoke to earlier. It's the belief that at my core, I am unworthy. And that just who I am, just as a being, is already subpar. And so I need to do everything. I got to put on the tap shoes. I got to, say the right thing, do the right thing at all times, because who I am, just as a baseline, is unworthy. So I got to hustle all day, every day to be worthy.
I am so glad we challenged that belief, because that belief is bullshit. Okay. All right. Question number 2. What's a small daily practice that helps you feel connected to yourself?
I really love like simple, small acts of creativity. And that for me can so many different things. Like I do a lot with musical instruments. So I just kind of leave my instruments in a place where they're easily accessible. I don't have them all packed up and put aside. I leave, like markers and pens and art material just out and available. I love puzzles. I do puzzles all the time, and I put them right on my dining room table. So it's like, as I'm going through my day, I have access to do something creative. And I feel like creativity is just like the nectar to our souls, and it's what that idea of like connecting to something greater. Like the divine wants nothing more for us than to be like the fullest expression of ourselves, and only each and every one of us individually can connect to that. But I feel creativity is something that we all are connected to in some way, and that's like superhighway to a greater connection.
And I love it because these are the things sometimes we forget. Like I loved coloring my whole life. I've never necessarily been like artistic. And then I never thought as an adult that was something I could do anymore.
Yeah.
Or like when I bought a bike as an adult, now I have an e-bike. That's like a whole different thing. But like my old school, like went to like Target and bought an $80 bike to like reconnect to my inner child. I mean, it doesn't have to be these big things. Like those little micro ways of connection make such a big difference. So thank you for speaking to those, because I hope someone listening might go, man, I love puzzles. I forgot I could do them. Or that I've had so many people where I go like, what is something that you used to, well, I loved playing the guitar, but now I'm a grown up.
Right.
And I'm not great at it. I'm not the best. I don't do it for my living. So why would I do that? Because it brings you joy and connects you back to that part of you, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, love it. So next question, what's a piece of advice you once got that changed everything for you? And it doesn't have to be everything, but just an impactful piece of advice.
Yeah, well, it was from you. And you said, I am allowed to change my mind. And I remember like to the day, to like what was going on at that time when you shared that. And it was just like a whole part of human existence was just like suddenly came online. It's like, whoa, wait a sec. You're right. I'm allowed to change my mind. Whether it's something I've agreed to or an obligation or a way showing up in the world, kind of it rewrote that old story of like, well, I can't change my mind because then I would be inconsiderate, unkind. I'd be going back on my word. I'd let the other person down, blah, 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 blah. But the idea that, we inherently The universe is always on our side. I am inherently worthy, and I can trust myself. And so if in this moment something has shifted or I'm reevaluating something and what feels true is to respond or act or do in a different way, I'm allowed to change my mind.
Which like essentially means I don't have to abandon myself. Like, I mean, isn't that wild that that's just not something that we know? Like, right. We've just not been conditioned to know that, like, wow, I can be in relationship with people and also still be in connection with me. Because my Lord, I would not let anybody else down, but me, heartbeat, 1 second. But I gotta live with me all the time, right? So I love that. That was a very freeing thing for me too. So this is one of my favorite questions because I love books. I love great self-help books in any genre of anything that touched your life. So what's one book that deeply impacted your personal growth?
There's this book called Iron John by this author and poet, Robert Bly. And short version of it, the author takes this really ancient myth, this really ancient story, and like in a very meticulous and thought-provoking way, like unravels the story to be like an illumination of the stages of development that men go through. And I've gone back to this book like so many times at different points in my life. And every time it's like, whoa, this is just the intelligence and the wisdom in these ancient stories. And I mentioned before, early days in my life, when I started to be exposed to shamanism, earth-based traditions, I was also I went way down deep with mythology and comparative mythology. Joseph Campbell, a lot of, some of the resources available through that. And what I found to be the most helpful is that, two perspectives. One, myths and legends are just cool stories that we now make into Marvel movies. The other is that these are this is the experience of being human that has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. And there's some common themes, there's some common threads. And different cultures through space and time and in different areas of the world and different experiences tap into that shared experience. And through their own creativity and their own contact to something greater than themselves, these stories come to life. And we can revisit these stories to get a different mirror held up to our own experience. And so that's, for me, like that Iron John is specific to like the journey and transformations that men go through. There are so many brilliant and fascinating ones written more towards those, to like the feminine experience of womanhood. Carol Pearson is a tremendous author in those respects. She wrote this one, Persephone Rising, which is super fascinating. But, the idea that these archetypal lived human experiences that we all share. Yeah. I mean, it's just like a treasure trove of wisdom that is just told through story, and we're storytelling creatures. So like, what a gift to have those to illuminate our own personal experience.
And this is one of my favorite parts about this question. Like, I don't know about those, I even though sometimes people are paying me for advice, like I'm learning so much from you guys too. So I just wrote them down and it sounds amazing. And thank you so much for sharing. Because, sometimes I'm like, I've read all of them. No, I have not, because I haven't read either one of these. So last question, what's something you do now that your younger self, Benny Blue Jeans, would be so proud of you for?
Well, I'm happy to say there's a lot, but the one that really kind of stands out, and it's a story I've told to other people as well, is like, I remember after I got really along the path of what I'm doing now and working in these ancestral traditions with the teachings and blessings of the wisdom carriers that have allowed me to learn from them, is, not only this relationship with my own inner child, but to really kind of touch into what I would safely say is like this is my path. This is what in this lifetime I'm here to do. Yeah. And that is to embrace and be connected into these ancient earth-based wisdom traditions and bring them into like modern experience. And so I had, in my own journeying, I had this one experience, and I had like spent so much time with my inner child and really developed a new level of relationship with him. And I had this memory come full into my vision. It was like reliving this, but from kind of the perspective of me now, looking at this memory I had. And I was just this little kid running through the woods. And I had a big long stick in my hand, and my dog was running around, and I'm talking to the trees and the animals, and I'm just having this beautiful game out in nature that I had all the time of just like running around. And I remembered like stopping in my tracks and like with all like the energy I had as that little kid being like, man, I hope I grow up to be a wizard someday. And just went back to running around, and I was like seeing this, and I was just able to tell him like, you do. Like, way to go, little guy. You know, you did it.
And I've never known a wizard. You're my first one. And you are, I mean, all of the magic that I would assume a wizard has, you have. And I could literally do an hour episode just on how many things you can be proud of yourself for. But I love that question, because I think that when we're in our not enough wound, you know, the future can seem kind of limiting. And it's why I agreed to do this podcast, even though I have a very busy schedule. I wanted people to know that like on the other side of this work are things you couldn't imagine are true. Like you can be a wizard. For me, it was like, I can wear whatever I want to work and start at 11 a.m. if I wanted to. Like I remember having that moment in my life where I was like, I just wish I could wear anything I wanted to work and start my day at 11. And I was like, well, that's not possible. No one can do that. And now I'm like, you know, I mean, I like show up in hoodies sometimes. So whatever it is, it's just like authentic. So I love that. And that's just like a silly example, but like you truly lived this dream of being authentic, because the wizard part is you. You're a deep, profoundly special, amazing healer.
Thank you so much, Robin. So grateful. Like I was going to say, couldn't have done this without you, but I want to say, I'm glad I get to do this with you.
I'm so honored. I can't even tell you. And the fact that, you know, I think our paths will probably cross professionally at some point, you know, you never know, but sometimes I have like a knowing. And as soon as I met you, I was like, I think he's going to be in my life for a very long time. So before we go, Ben, I'd love for you to share how people can find you, and if you have any like offerings, upcoming work, or ways that people can connect with you and your work.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. I can be reached through my website, which is originalmythology.com. And the work that I primarily offer is helping and guiding and supporting and mentoring those who feel called to develop their own personal relationship with the mystical, with the sacred, and to really work in collaboration as, you know, not like an instructor or a teacher, but more like a fellow traveler who's just, you know, a couple yards down the road further. And along those, there's, you know, they're really kind of tailored to the individual. Some of them work with plant medicine. Some of them feel more called to, you know, a direct experience of nature or different practices, working with your dreams, practicing some shamanic skills and techniques that can create that personal connection. So if anyone was ever interested or wants to explore that a bit further, you can visit my website, and I will look forward to the conversation.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list of other episodes I want to have you on. But someone did tell me that you were exceptional at dream interpretation. Is that how you would describe it? Or
yeah. Working with kind of the wisdom and the intelligence that come through the dreams is a big part of it. That's one of the cool things is, you know, if someone's like, well, I've never done this before, I don't even know where to start. Like shamanism is just such like this kind of archaic way over their word. And it's like you do something mystical every single night, and that's the dreams. And what would it be like to start engaging with that from this perspective rather than just like, oh, I remember my dreams sometimes they're wacky or this or that, or I don't even know what any of my dreams mean. It's like, well, it's a language, kind of like what we're saying. Just like our nervous system communicates to us through feelings, our dreams often communicate through us through metaphor and image and symbolism. And it's our own language that we can learn to develop and connect to and relate to experience that in a more deeper way.
Okay, so I'm inviting you on the show. Will you come on and talk about that again?
Yes.
I got to get some more like of the core work in, but after that, would you come in? That's so fascinating. Okay. Amazing. Thank you for describing all of that. So Ben, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you for coming today. I know that you're busy and I appreciate you coming on and taking the time, for your honesty and for the way that you've shown up in your life, and for being willing to let other people witness the behind the scenes of your healing. And to everyone listening, I want this episode to be a reminder that boundaries are not mean. They're not a wall, that they're invitations that create more safety and connection in our life. And they're the way that we begin to live in alignment with who we truly are. So if Ben's story resonated with you, please share this episode with someone who's navigating their own path of self-trust and transformation. And next week, I'm going to have another incredible guest on who's done some deep work around boundaries as well. And I cannot wait to share it with you. So until then, Ben, this goes to you and everybody listening. Your needs matter. Your peace matters, and you're allowed to protect both. So take great care of yourself, and I'll see you on the show next week. And Ben, this has been incredible for me. Just seeing your face for the first time, like in an interactive way, and having your wisdom and insight and energy as a part and kind of a foundational part of this show is such an honor.
Thank you so much, Robin. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to help so many people. I'm just grateful I get to be one of them and walk together with you on this.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, bye. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.